A lot of dogs around this park. Oh, hello. It's amazing how dusty my glasses get if I'm on site a bit. Come back to the office and I look at them, I'm like, wow, what was I looking at on site? Like, you can work in a lot of different fields. You can work for developers, contractors. You want to work in mining and do structural engineering in mining, and also there's positions available there. So there's a lot of diversity in the civil engineering field. So my name's Anton. I'm currently a third year civil engineering student at Monash University in Melbourne. I currently work for a civil engineering contractor. They're down in doing a road and bridge project. Really great to get my foot in the door, just learn everything there is to know about civil engineering, but ultimately I do want to progress more into the structural field. So it's largely site work. So we get the designs, but so the design packages are massive. It's taken a long time to go through them all, but yeah, just helping out grads and the site engineers, just doing site-based work.
I think it's quite good to get onto a contractor or even a design engineer. You get to have that different experience where your practical is coming into the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Have you found it being helpful to your uni career so far?
Yeah, it has. So going to third year and progressing into third year and final year, definitely do a lot more of the design-based work. So second year is all fundamentals. Now I'm really, with my experience over the summer, having worked full-time, it's been great to just know what all the terms are and how, in my case, building a bridge and building a road.
Yes.
Hopefully makes it a bit easier going forward.
What type of design work have you done so far with them?
Design work, I haven't done design work with my company. So just on site.
Work and you get to see how things come together.
Exactly. So it's still a lot of office work, but not so much. A lot of things. I guess one of them is just the enthusiasm with professionals like yourself and other people I've seen YouTube and podcasts. Yeah, the enthusiasm to communicate what the field is all about to a lot of different people. So that's one thing that caught my eye when I first was choosing back in 3 years ago when I was choosing my career, my course. But I suppose also it's a bit more personal level, but I grew up watching a lot of Grand Designs by Kevin McLeod. The music is probably the top, but yeah, that was good. I think ultimately I have a bit of an aspiration to design my own house, working with an architect.
You'd have had that love for engineering for a long time then?
Yeah, my mum really enjoyed it, so I think it's helped me progress like that. I think just to talk to a lot of people. I know it's been amazing the sort of conversations you can have when you just ask a few open-ended questions with people at work, guest lecturers that come to uni, even lecturers, just to stay back a little bit, organise a meeting, 5-10 minutes, might even turn into half an hour. It's happened a couple of times. A 5-minute meeting goes an hour long, but
keeps going.
It's good to just pull over people that have been in there in the field for a long time.
You get a bit more insight into engineering.
Yeah.
So was anything surprised you from those discussions?
I suppose just how much hard work a lot of engineers put in. Yes. You can see that it starts from first year uni. Definitely was a big step up for me. I wasn't expecting that, but going for it ramps up and you can see where people become really organised and all these sorts of things. I think that's probably been most surprising, but.
You get very good at time management, otherwise you just fail. So I can see that before you were saying that you actually help run the Civil Engineering Club, which is really good, getting out there, helping with your communication skills. What's some of the things that you think makes those events better? So if someone's going to one of those events, how should they approach it?
It's really good to go to these sorts of events. I've personally been to a couple and I've just gotten my foot in the door in the committee. It's a classic case of the more effort you put in, the more value you get out. I think that's been the theme that I've found pretty consistent throughout. Specifically, just being a bit organised and coming, so whether that be wearing a shirt, to having a couple of questions prepared, just to conversation starters.
Yes.
Usually I made a list of 5 or 6, just in the case that there's nothing immediately that comes to your mind when you start a conversation with someone. All sorts of communication, writing presentations, speeches, and those sorts of things. Recently presented to the first years and second year cohort at Monash. Just to introduce the club and what we're doing. So it's all exposing myself to a whole lot of different ways of communicating. You can learn a lot of things from everyone. You just got to ask and present it in the right way. That's what I found. Is labourers on site. There's a lot of information and facts and skills that they know. You just got to ask in the right way. I set myself a couple of goals for when I was full-time. So I had worked part-time prior to that, same company. And then I transitioned into full-time over summer, so 12 weeks. And that moment that I started full-time was a big change. All of a sudden you get treated with a lot more, you have a lot more responsibility. You suddenly are now, some tasks lumped onto you. I think one of my site engineers I was working with gave me a list of 20 things to do. And I was like, oh, for the week? No, today. Just today. I was like, wow, all right, that's really getting into it. I think that's a big change that I've seen. Not a huge amount of software, so Excel is a construction contractor, so...
Bluebeam or anything?
Yeah, Bluebeam. Oh, a lot of Bluebeam. I've downloaded Bluebeam onto my personal computer now. I was like so used to it.
you get very addicted to it and need it everywhere in your life.
Yeah. I managed to wrangle myself a student free trial version for, say, 6 months, so to refresh that one.
Definitely worth it.
Yeah.
You can see, even as a design engineer, you'll be using Bluebeam, Word, Excel a lot anyway. You're probably surprised that you don't actually jump into software like RAM Concept, which is a slab design software, or ETAB, which is, I don't know if you played with that, which is stability design software. Yeah. More often you're in that communication space where you're writing, you're documenting. Bluebeam is, you're doing diagrams about how to fix something.
Yes.
Or explain a concept as well is really powerful for something like Bluebeam.
Yeah, so breaking down those either things you've observed or doing a lot of markups. Obviously, it's very spatial construction. And just to communicate what's been happening, some progress over time, and that's something it's a lot easier to communicate with those markups.
So you'd be surprised that you'll probably actually use it a lot more than that. That's probably what most people actually spend their time in when they're actually working in the field.
Ah, right. Yeah. Okay.
So what you're building now is actually building for that career when you go into moving to a graduate.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I've been hoping that this experience has been. Just I think a lot of people say that it doesn't really matter what sort of experience you have in uni. If you can get something, it's relevant for anything within the civil engineering. There's a lot of overlap.
And there's also spaces when I was working, you could tell a graduate that had the pre-graduate experience versus someone that hadn't. It's like night and day. There's a big difference in quality of what they do because they've got a little bit of knowledge about how drawings works. They sort of know how engineering comes together. So it is actually, it was very beneficial. We were finding that people that had that experience, doesn't matter what it was, had a lot better involvement and actually were more productive as a graduate engineer.
Okay. Yeah, I've also been fortunate enough just to network with all my peers as well. So I think that's something that people I've seen in older years have sort of told me that the importance of that.
Yes.
I know past presidents of the Civil Club and even just people who've been in uni for a while just told me that it's very important to start building networks, and you can start with just your peers, but then going into industry events, you can.
And that's also something you should be doing more in your career when you're moving through it. It's probably a little bit early now, but even now, you start to talk to different architects and different clients. You'll find that you've got to try and build those relationships. So when you're moving up through the ranks, you got them to find those new jobs. So it's about keeping up with those contacts, not even just structural engineering. Structural engineering at the moment because you're trying to find that job, but in the future, your graduate architects, your undergraduate architects, and keeping up that level of communication will be grateful for everyone. You can learn a little bit from them, they can learn a little bit from you, and then in the long run, maybe then you start to work together on projects when you get up near the high position. It's something that takes a long time to build up and something that you've got to work at actively.
Okay, yeah, I've had a chat with some of the software companies that we've used as well. The Civilo as more of a model of the design packages we've got. So I was fortunate enough to have a chat with some of their developers. And it's just good to see everything that goes into infrastructure design projects, and it's not just unidirectional, and I think branching out
and depending on what people are looking at, it's definitely everyone goes everywhere.
Yeah, because you could see that they knew a lot about what we do. They had a good insight, but maybe not perfect. So there were things that we were like, okay, I can see where you're coming from. What would save us a lot more time would be to do this, or to help us do markups a lot easier. obviously there's going to be big advancements in the structural engineering field, and I'm really looking forward to seeing those sorts of things. Just to get a bit of a bigger picture as to what these advancements, what the future is going to look like, I thought I'd go and ask a couple of people that I've spoken to, that I've worked with in the past. Spoke to Ben, Elaine, and Shivam, and yeah, this is what they said. It's something that's going to be quite a big thing going in the future is 3D modeling and BIM becoming a larger deliverable in comparison to the 2D structural design drawings. And I think it's just very important for these models to be accurate and detailed enough that it can almost replace drawings in some respect, but also include all the notes that are associated with those. So I imagine that's going to be...
And something that it makes things easier and harder, I think it's a little bit lost the art of how to draw something in 2D. It's like any software you can jump into, I find. You have to be able to know what the answer is going to be before you actually jump into the software. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going. Like, if you're talking about geometries and stuff, you can get really good where the geometries are and how things are going to downplay. But I think people underestimate the benefit of hand drawings and 2D pictures. There is definitely benefits there, and it does help a lot more. And I think we're going to be moving into probably like a 3D, 4D, 5D type of situation, and trying to have that one model that has everything inside it. There's a real challenge there.
Yeah, I can imagine just visualizing that as well.
Visualizing that and LED 500, and then who has control of which? Because if you're working off the architecture model as a structural engineer, like you could accidentally move the wall this way, and then who's at fault? Or if you need to put additional structure in, how do you put that in without affecting the architecture model, especially if you're working in the same space? Yeah, it's all in one, and there's a lot of access control issues that people are working through at the moment as they're moving up through it, because you want to be working in the same space. You don't want the engineer to have one drawing, the architect to have another drawing, the MEP to have another drawing, then you're all coming together and realize that nothing fits, right? So BIM has definitely helped a lot with that type of stuff, but there's definitely a lot more, even when I was there practicing a lot, was engineers jumping into modeling. It's something that I think a lot of people should actually be doing as well, is spending some time, just because you're an engineer doesn't mean you can't also be a modeler as well. You can learn quite a lot from having that experience.
Okay, yeah. All right, I guess another thing that I've got from Elaine, Ben and Shivam is just in the sustainability space, it's going to be a lot passive house design as well.
Passive house design. The other one, I don't know if it would be worth researching as well. Concrete is really important. But concrete is 10% of the global emissions total. That's huge, right? So there's an organization called Concrete Zero. What their aim is to do a lot of research in concrete. They're getting a lot of the big consultancies to come together and research how can we bring concrete to zero, which is a big effort.
Yeah. On that as well, just with new materials, performance-based design I've heard that being thrown around a lot.
So what performance-based design is effectively is, instead of going down the point of the code, which is prescriptive, you're going down the point of doing physical tests, pushing stuff over, breaking things, right? You're not necessarily going just because your code says, oh, no, you did this calculation has a capacity of 5. They said, no, we've pushed 10,000 of them over. The capacity is actually 15, right? Or it becomes a lot like in structures, it's a little bit harder because there's a lot of testing you need to go into, but really comes into own is something like, durability testing or waterproof testing or thermal testing, because those things are quite crude and it's quite hard to calculate, especially if you're having a look at an example, a really good one is the way, energy flows like thermal and CFD is really hard on a computer and you can't actually analyze it properly, where if you can do physical tests, you're going to get a better result than what the more prescriptive approach would make you do.
Does that make that whole design process longer because of these tests that you might have to do?
It makes it longer, or you need to find other papers as well. So where it becomes into owners is when you're going a little bit off track. And a lot of the time the codes are only prescriptive to a certain point, right? So therefore you need to go down to design things properly. Or, you're doing things like pushover design in earthquake, where stuff that's not really codified, but you can show that it works through other papers and stuff. So sometimes, especially a lot of time, when you're starting to do the more complex structures, you can't codify it, you can't design it without being super conservative and having a beam that's twice as big as it needs to be. So therefore you then need to go down the more performance-based solution to get an answer.
Okay, yeah, right. Do you think that's a way of manufacturers of new innovative materials, is that a way of allowing those materials to be used before the 5-10 year process of codifying all of these?
Codifying comes up, but even nowadays with more traditional designs such as earthquake in in concrete designs. So using your pushover analysis as a more performance-based approach is also the better way to go about it, because everyone's pushing to have a more cheaper solution. So what you can do on two hands by adopting this type of design is a design that is more efficient, but also safer at the same time. So you're not meeting the code requirements, so you can sort of hit both if you take the right approach.
Okay, yeah. And I guess another thing that's more in the workflow side of things is automation and maybe AI. I'm not sure where that exactly plays a part.
That's probably another big one is AI and how the rise of ChatGPT. So do you see that really changing our profession?
I guess you have to be cautious that it doesn't take the creativity and side of things out of it. And you have to have that fundamental understanding first and foremost before you rely on any other intelligence to give you some sort of solution.
So a lot of those repetitive like slab designs, column designs, I think by the end of my career, and definitely by the end of your career, a lot of new builds won't be designed by an engineer. They'll take a different approach where they're using AI to do that. And so what that allows you to do is spend more time on the more complex, fun stuff, really, to be fair. But it also means that as engineers, we need to be more knowledgeable about structural mechanics, how things actually work, right? Have that understanding and not just relying on the computer. A lot of people just go to the computer for the answer, right? And we can have a dime a dozen of the people that just go to the computer for the answer, because anyone can do that. But you'll be more powerful if you can use programming to help leverage that AI, but also understanding really truly understanding structural mechanics, so you can come up with something more efficient. Because AI can only do what is known. It can't invent something new, right? So, for example, it can never be like the Carl Sagans or the Van Goghs. They were the first of their kind, right? But now that they exist, they can replicate it. Most mistakes that are currently happening at the moment, especially in engineering, is what you call a copy and paste error. So someone has inputted it incorrectly. So if you can remove that copy and paste error, you remove a lot of human-induced errors in our design. So it's definitely something that was progressing slowly through here, but now with AI really starting to take off, it's going to be even more so.
Just speaking about copy and paste, I've heard the term parametric design and dynamic design thrown around a bit as well. So I imagine that would simplify things if clients or architects need changes last minute.
Changes last minute. So for example, we had one design where we were about to issue it like this week, right? Yeah. And the client went, it was more about the way we'd set up the designs, not so much parametric, but we set it up in a way that the data could flow through. But they went, okay, we want to add 2 kPa on every floor. It's an 80-story building, right? With multiple floors and multiple different transfer structures. Within half an hour, we had redesigned the whole building and we updated the model. So we had the new columns in, we had the new transfer loads in, we had the new footings in. And we'd redesigned the whole building from top to bottom and updated the drawings within half an hour. Yeah, there's probably 1,000 columns on that job. If you do that manually, it'd be a week's worth of work.
Yeah, it's a whole new building almost, yeah.
So it's definitely something you need to look at, but parametric design also allows them to play with variables and get different answers out. It's quite powerful, and it's really where you're looking at things like, especially you're playing with geometry. There's things like Galapagos and that you can attach into a program called Rhino. So Rhino is like your 3D BIM modeling software, and you can write little programs using Grasshopper, and then you can use a generic algorithm called Galapagos to help iterate through different solutions.
Ah, okay.
It's really quite fun, especially if you're trying to get into the field of programming. That's really a soft way to get into it, is this type of thing, because it has these little things called batteries that you're linking up codes. So you're thinking more like the code, but you don't actually need to write the script.
Yeah, I suppose that's something that AI might be able to assist in the future, because you have an idea of what you need to do.
Yes.
Obviously, it's important to have an understanding of the code and how that all works, the language. But if you can say something in plain English,
yes,
you might be able to get some code from AI systems that can help you out.
Individual would definitely be someone who can prompt AI to get the right answer, right? I don't know if you played with things like Midjourney or ChatGPT. You can see sometimes it comes with the wrong error. Like I've typed in stuff and just gone, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Completely wrong.
Yeah, but could be the fact that you didn't prompt it in the right way. The information is there. It knows a lot of things, but yeah, you got to feed it the right information.
Especially like a program like Midjourney, the right prompts can lead to some amazing stuff. So that's why I think moving to the future, having the right prompts, and so having that structural mechanics, so you know what to prompt to ask it to try and solve.
Okay. Oh, didn't know anything about that before, so learning new things every day. Yeah. And I've spoken to a couple of fourth years, and I've seen what they've done. They're There might be some, 4-story apartment building on Revit, or and I'm like, I look at that, I'm like, okay, wow, hang on, how many years away is that for me? 1 year. 1 year I've gone from what I know now to this.
The whole building.
So yeah, I think just acknowledging that there is going to be a lot of hard work, but embracing that. I guess another question is, what have you seen a lot of uni students do that is a really good thing that they should be continuing to take forward in their career?
It's probably like you're doing now, like communication skills, improving those. I would say like trying to get some site experience, which obviously you're doing as well. That gives you a good insight about how things go together and some of the problems you have on site. But I've seen a lot of people neglect they're thinking they're just doing the hard numbers. That's what engineering is all about. Engineering is more about their ability to communicate the ideas that they have than actually do the numbers themselves. You could have the best engineer, but if they can't communicate what they're doing is really useless for it.
Yeah, similar advice. It's very exciting. There's a lot of different pathways, and something I think I started only to realize in first year was you can work in a lot of different fields. You can work for clients. You can work for developers, contractors. Even if you want to work in mining and do structural engineering in mining, and also there's positions available there. So ultimately there's a lot of diversity in the civil engineering field.
Nice meeting you, Anton. And
yes,
obviously hopefully this was a good interview. We just had Anton learning a little bit about, as an undergraduate experience, some of the stuff that he has in civil engineering and some of the experience of his friends. Anyway, my name's Brendan, your structural engineer. I'd like to see you next week. Bye.
Bye.